If you thought the Walt Disney Company had been in trouble in 2023, you ain't seen nothing yet. We're here to tell you that for all the bad news in all of the 11 months prior, and they have been plenty bad, there has been nothing like what is coming out this December. It's so bad that if you put all the bad news for Disney, again, plenty of it, together for the last 11 months, it probably would not rise to how bad this audit is of what Disney was doing in Central Florida. Folks, this has ramifications that could see criminal prosecutions taken against those at the top of Disney, including Iger. Some are calling it the most damning document Disney has ever seen. And yes, folks, we're actually the ones calling it that, and we're going to try to relay to you why you may want to call it that. We're talking about the independent audit of the Walt Disney World Resort, which confirms essentially everything that we have been saying here, and which the heavy dosage pixie dusters never quite understood in the first place. Joining us today for this massive discussion is Andrew of Legal Mindset, John F. Trent, editor-in-chief of ThatParkPlace.com, and Jonas J. Campbell, investigative reporter and anchor of That Park Place, the YouTube channel. And we suspect that Valiant Renegade will be joining us a little bit later in the show. We're here to tell you as we get into this, folks, that what we're talking about has ramifications, as we've said in the past, going up to perhaps $1 trillion. No, not $1 trillion, $1 billion. No, $1 trillion. Andrew, how much?
$1 trillion. No,
it is $1 trillion.
And this goes beyond that because you've got additional millions, billions piling on in all of the unpaid taxes, potential criminal penalties, potential civil penalties. You've got so much in liability that's implied by this audit that things are not looking good for the rest.
So, folks, we said all that to say, yes, we mean it when we call out trillion. We're not being facetious. We're not employing hyperbole. Really, this is huge. This goes so far, folks, that towards the end of the video, we're going to talk to you about the criminal possibilities that exist all the way up to Bob Iger, and we're serious about this. We are very, very serious about it. All of this is incredible. Let's take a look now at the article that we're going to begin with, and then we'll go to the actual audit here in a moment. This by John F. Trent here on the panel out of ThatParkPlace.com. New report claims Disney created an experimental absolute monarchy within the borders of the state of Florida. A new report from the state of Florida's Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, also known as SIFTOD, declares that the Walt Disney Company created an experimental absolute monarchy within the borders of the Sunshine State. In the introduction to the report, which featured professional testimony by Professor Donald Koken, Bill Jennings and Kimley Horn for the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, it makes it abundantly clear that the Walt Disney Company did in the state of Florida, declaring Disney had established an extra-constitutional, i.e. illegal, governing authority, an experimental absolute monarchy within the borders of the state of Florida, and accordingly the United States, one that strikingly resembled, without exaggeration, a kingdom of yore. The report is specifically discussing the Reedy Creek Improvement District, which was created back in 1967 and was recently replaced by Governor Ron DeSantis with the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. Now, I want to take just a very brief moment and go to Jonas J. Campbell because, folks, please humor us here. We know many of you already know the details of all of this. Jonas, for those who are just discovering this channel for the first time or hearing about this for the first time, what was the Reedy Creek Improvement District and why is it bad?
The year was 1967. Walt Disney went to the state of Florida with a song and a dance, which looking back at this, it really was a song and a dance that he wanted to set up the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. I think I want to start calling that the experimental medieval kingdom of yesteryear, MCOY. There's probably something stronger to call that. But he came to the state of Florida and said, we want to buy a bunch of land. We want to build a Disney World, actually a Disneyland, which would have been the image they had in their mind. And also, here's this idea for a community of the future where people will come in and out. We'll have all kinds of new technology. We'll bring in vendors. We'll do this big habitation. Well, guess what? They got all jazzed up. And then Walt Disney, may he rest in peace, he died of lung cancer. And they went on without him and went ahead and signed this legislation, giving the Walt Disney Company incredible powers that have never and should never again be granted to a corporation to have all the runway they need to just go ahead and build whatever they want within the state of
But
Florida.
that wasn't enough for
including-
Disney, was it, Jonas?
Right, including, and this is specifically enumerated in the agreement, the ability to create an experimental nuclear reactor.
That's always normal. You hear about that in every single,
Totally normal.
yeah,
Every town's got one, you know?
every housing district. John, as someone who, you cover the news, but you haven't necessarily been hyper focused on the parks. Does this shock you at all that this is what was going on in Florida, that Disney had something that many would argue was more powerful than the Vatican City in Central Florida?
Not from what I've heard from a lot of people in Florida, especially Florida residents. They seem to have kind of known that Disney was working with like a lot of the Florida legislature, or the Florida legislature was kind of maybe turning a blind eye and obviously getting a lot of carve outs and handouts and things like that. I think to the extent that this report details how much they were getting is quite shocking. But for the most part, I do think that people realize that, like as most corporations, they're getting handouts and carve outs from the government, whether that's the state government or the federal government. But again, as the how much and what they were doing and all the powers that they had and how they were manipulating everything, I think that is truly shocking.
Well, Andrew, I know you are chomping at the bit. Let me read this paragraph and then let you loose onto everybody involved with Disney. They're going to love this video, I'm telling you. It goes on to note that the Walt Disney Company never fulfilled its promises for the Reedy Creek Improvement District. Disney sold the RCID as one thing in the mid-1960s, but there was deception behind the pitch and sale. The company promised, for example, affordable housing, transportation, and other social and community services. Today, 100,000 people commute into the district to work for Disney. Yet under Disney's control, the RCID built no workforce, housing, or schools, and did not develop any public services directed at anyone but Disney tourists. The district also gave special treatment to Disney. The RCID never made Disney pay impact fees, as all other developers in Orange and Osceola counties must pay. Transportation impact fees linked to hotel rooms alone would cost Disney $130 million in Orange County today. Andrew, as someone who is specialized, I can't believe this, someone who has a specialty in the special districts and has sat at the table with many of the folks who will be both defending and going after Disney.
Correct.
Walk us through why all of this it matters to such a degree that it will likely impact U.S. law from henceforth. Walk us through it all.
This was the last company town. So in all of America, this is it. This is the last vestige. So when they say this is the most egregious incident of cronyism they have ever seen in modern American history, they're not exaggerating, because this is truly something that involved a perversion, an absolute corruption of government practices, corporate practices for that matter, of business, financial practices, and of the law. They broke all of these things. They broke professional rules, legal rules, administrative rules, regulatory rules. It appears based on all the information we have. And by the way, this report is not just us saying it based on our feelings, which is all Disney provides in its court filings for its evidence, just pixie dust and feelings. Well, in this case, they've got dozens of exhibits of hard evidence of prima facie, that is on its face, evidence of crimes. If this is submitted to a court, if it is given to a court, they look at it, that's the crime. There's no more that's needed to be explained. There's no intent for many of these crimes. It's, did you do this thing? If you did this thing, you committed a crime. So Disney is on the hook on this audit for so many things. And the thing to me that really jumps out, Pro, is that I have read a lot of audits. I actually helped edit and write some audits, because governmental audits take into account legal aspects and governance aspects as well as financial aspects. I've written a lot of audits. Audits are supposed to be boring. Audits should make paint drying sound like it's the Super Bowl, right? This is something that should be absolutely something you do not want to read. But this audit is riveting, and it's riveting in how depraved Disney has really fallen.
So for clarification, Andrew, this audit is not prepared by politicians. There are going to be detractors who watch this video who say, "Oh, well, this is part of a hit job."
This audit was prepared by. This audit was prepared by 4 professionals, 2 of which, in full disclosure, I have personally worked with during my time in Florida, Bill Jennings, as well as Kimley Horn. So it's prepared by 4 people. First, a legal expert. That is Professor Cocken. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm very sorry, Professor. Right? He's at George Mason at the Antonin Scalia School of Law, but he is entirely on point when it comes to government law. What makes a government a government? What is agency capture? I.e., when a government is entirely captured by a industry or by a business. This is a classic example. It's just like, for example, if the Department of Energy was captured by BP or Chevron. That would be an example of agency capture where you
Those are very interesting examples you just picked out right there.
I'm just randomly throwing them out for no reason and no implication at all. Just hyper theoretical, because of course this is educational content. And as a lawyer, I have a lot of hypotheticals. But that being said, this is a textbook example of agency capture, where employees think they are employees of the private company, where they think that Disney's interests are RCID's interests. They all thought this, to the extent that they were being given passes by Disney, and they believed that those were gifts from Disney, but RCID was paying Disney for them. They had no idea. That's agency capture. That's what expert number one talked about. Expert number two is Bill Jennings. He's a forensic accountant. This is a guy who's much like Valiant or Mike, who knows all about accounting and audits, who goes through it with a fine-tooth comb. And for these guys who are normally boring as a coffin nail, these guys are he went out there and went into the accounting details and said, this is a gross violation of accounting practices, of due diligence, of what should be done in regular financing of large transactions. It's a complete abnormality. The third was Kimley Horn, which talked about planning and urban development and showed that Disney did none of what they promised. I've worked with them. Kimley Horn is specialist in special district in Florida, in special district development. They've worked on most, if not almost all, of the special districts in Florida. So they know Florida and they know Florida development for special districts. And they're saying, Disney and RCID ain't it. They are not following their charter and mandate. Last, they had a public resource group, which was another independent financial advisor, which added additional comments on top of Jennings, as well as helped compile all of the findings and put them together. So these were not crackerjack people that were coming out of nowhere. These are all professionals. These are all very well-established folks. These are not partisans. These are people that are doing work regardless of who your political affiliation is with. And these professionals have come out there and said that. By the way, speaking of lawyers, myself included, they actually went out there and called out the Disney lawyers for their lack of professionalism, which I almost never see, because you don't want to go out and accuse another professional of violating professional rules. You have a lot of potential actions against you, but they were willing to go to bat and say, nope, these guys violated their ethical duty to not represent two conflicting clients by representing Disney and the CFTOD, which is exactly what Disney's lawyers did.
And folks, if you're wondering how Disney managed to capture a government, which is what is alleged, we're going to show you in the document in just a few moments exactly how that happened. But first, I want to bring on another guest to this video, that being Valiant Renegade. And Valiant, when we talk about the box office for this year, we've never seen a company lose the kind of money that Disney has lost. People are putting this anywhere between $1 billion and $1.3 billion that the company has lost at the box office. And that's record breaking. And that's big enough that we cover it many, many times because it's record breaking. And yet it pales in comparison to what we're talking about with this situation. And so just to give people an idea, we're talking about something that is at least 100 times as bad and maybe far, far greater than that, perhaps 1,000 times as bad. Valiant, what I want to ask you is, with all of this, these allegations that the Walt Disney Company was involved in extraordinarily corrupt maneuvers and illegal activities with local governments, of course, all of this alleged at this point, but with all of these claims being made, Valiant, do you what do you think the consequence is with investors who may not have understood any of this was taking place?
Well, it's funny you ask that. And let me say, in the intro, I apologize. The camera and the functions technologically are not working tonight as much as I hoped they would.
You look better this way.
Oh, good.
I like it.
Thank God.
I like it. You should switch.
Nobody wants to see my ugly face. That being said, Let me say this. It's funny you ask that, Pro, and let me preface this with a belated congratulatory effort here on your 50K for the year.
Congrats.
Yes,
Well, thank
indeed.
you. Thank you.
Indeed. I'm going to have a video coming out probably by the time this one releases within the next 12 to 24 hours. We'll be talking about some of this, but you're absolutely right. There is a value proposition here for the Walt Disney Company that has failed. And we're going to cover that. And that is that, things have not gone the way that Disney had hoped in the past several years. Bob Iger is not
That's an
the type
understatement.
of yeah, exactly. Bob Iger is not someone who is capable of, covering it up anymore.
Bob
Let's put it
Iger
that
may
way.
be in some real criminal trouble here.
He very well could be. And I think we're seeing the political machinations of trying to assuage some of the more, let's just say, dire consequences of actions by Bob Iger and the Walt Disney Company in the last decade or two. I'll put it that way. I'm trying to find a way to put this in a manner that is based in simplistic allegation and innuendo and evidentiary procedure. I mean, look, let's
There's
call
nothing, Valiant, there's nothing simplistic about this anymore. This
There's
just got
not.
extraordinarily complicated because you got to understand. I mean, you're how many things on this, Valiant? Let me ask you this question. How many things are going to have to be reported to the SEC? Or can they just they just ignore? Can they just ignore this? Can they just not report this?
No, they can't. And you and I, Andrew, this morning, you and I released. I say this morning on Monday morning. You guys are probably watching. Or I'm sorry, Tuesday morning. You guys are watching the video that we're doing now. Wednesday at some point, Andrew and I did a video yesterday, and I mean, look, we were trying to be as kind as imaginably possible. This was about as kind as we could be, in the same sense that the audit that the state of Florida just ramrodded up Mickey's bunghole for Reedy Creek.
Cheese hole.
Yeah,
Brian.
the cheese hole. The
Well,
cheese
let's
hole.
Let's walk through. Just, I mean, folks, there's 80 plus pages of nonstop. Here's what you did that was illegal. Here's what you did that is unconstitutional.
It's
So,
bad. It's
just to give-
really, really bad.
Just to give 3 of these things, there are 2 state-of-the-art parking garages of who knows how much these parking garages are worth. Well, they know, but they are
I'm
tremendously.
not sure that they do. I'm not sure
I
that
mean,
they
you
do.
guys
Actually,
have been in
depending.
you guys have been in the orange, lime, and grapefruit garage. I mean, most people you parked at Disney Springs, you've been in this garage. You've
Right,
used it.
garages with escalators and marble walls and everything, and lights that turn on and let you know exactly how many spots are available on every single floor and all of that. Apparently paid for with taxpayer dollars, despite the fact that they directly benefit the Walt Disney Company, vis-a-vis allowing everybody to go into Disney Springs. So they function as a method to draw people into retail space, apparently paid through by taxpayers. We've got a situation where apparently there was a city planner paid for by the RCID and not by the actual cities. There may be some very unconstitutional situations with that. We also have and this blows my mind. Jonas, thank you for sending some of these my way. We have a situation where Reedy Creek Improvement District, a special district that was empowered by 2 pseudo cities that don't really exist but sort of do exist.
Mm-hmm.
But this special district had a vendor approved list. And do you know how you get on the vendor approved list?
Yes,
RCID?
actually, no, I do. You have to be on the Lake Buena Vista Double Wide Association. I mean, that's just it. I mean, all you have to
this
do
was
is,
actually worse, Valiant. It was
And-
race based.
And
It's
you have
race
to be-
based.
and you have to be a black woman, right?
Yes.
So, like, if you're not a transgender, if you don't make it lame and gay and put a woman in it, then, as KK would say, it ain't getting on the approved list. And
I
listen,
mean,
this is not a joke. This is really not a joke. And even I said a story I had during my time as a lawyer when I was working in adjacent Bonnet Creek. They said, because we had to get an environmental permit from them, we had to do a minor modification to the bushes. But because they control the wetlands, we had to get a permit from them. And they said, for your work, for your paving, your asphalt, if you don't use our contractor, who charges twice as much, right? Who's completely unresponsive, who's not good in terms of quality. If you do not use our contractor, we're not going to give you your permit.
Yeah, I'll
That's
just
how they
point
roll.
out for those of you who are following along at home, the document is out there. It can be found. The page that is listed as page 10 says that they engaged in race-based hiring for the vendor list. And then on the
I think that's
following
illegal.
page,
Just a heads
Yeah,
up.
Yeah,
for those
that
people
is
who are
slightly-
busy.
very
Slightly.
illegal. It's
Absolutely.
slightly illegal.
in violation of so many laws.
But
And
guys,
then-
they got a 100 perfect score with the Human Rights Council. That
but if you
negates
don't
all
play
of
ball,
it, right?
they're going to delay your permits
Oh,
by,
yeah.
by at least
Just
3
like it's got a perfect score with the Iranians. I mean, great. That's fine. You know, we can all go into the subtext on that one. No, look, here's the deal. I'll talk about this more later, but I mean, look, all of this plays into this whole machination with the Florida state government, Disney trying to bail their own butts out. Look, the bottom line is this, is that Bob Iger is a failure as a chief executive officer. He didn't build anything at Disney. He talked about this last week at the Deal Book Summit for the New York Times with Andrew Sorkin, going back and forth. I did this. I did that. I built this. I built that. Bruh, you didn't build a damn thing.
He bought
You
it.
Bought Lucasfilm.
you
Marvel.
bought stuff. Yes.
Yep.
Exactly, John. You're dead on the money. He bought stuff and then he broke it. That's it. Wall Street has got to wake up. I'm going to go into more detail on this on the channel, but I mean, Wall Street has got to wake up. This is a train wreck. And the Reedy Creek thing that we're talking about here tonight, the issue here that Andrew and I have been covering with Pro and Jonas and John here for the last year and a half, we have been slamming this. We have been bringing the reality. You've got to understand what is really going on. And that is that Disney has spent decades and decades and decades on end abusing a privilege, not a right, but a privilege
and
in
not
Florida.
even and not even, and to be clear, it's not even their privilege. It was really a privilege that was really given to that area, to that land, right? That land was privileged to be developed in a special way. And that land contains other people than Disney now. It
Yes.
contains 16% of people that are paying for the overall taxes. But more than that, what this has revealed is that 16% is actually being taxed more than Disney.
Yes.
Because Disney is actually, so Disney, they've made a big deal. We're the biggest taxpayer. Are you? Because what you're actually doing is double taxing everybody else in the district while giving yourself kickbacks and paying money back, funneling money back into Disney.
Oh, wow.
So ultimately, Disney
Yep.
ends up gaining
Yep.
while they
Jonas.
double tax the other people. So I haven't run the math on it, but there could be a compelling case that actually the other people end up, when you net out the gains Disney takes and the kickbacks they gain, that Disney actually pays less than everyone else.
And as is pointed out frequently in this document, Disney is getting to decide what to do with that tax money within the district. So
Yes,
it becomes
Jonas.
their money. And so without representation to the other 57 entities that are represented in this district without Disney, they are not being represented by all of these taxes. And then Disney gets to decide what to do with it. Disney is the sole beneficiary here. Those garages that are so nice, all those off-duty police officers, all of that benefit goes to Disney, not the taxpayers that are in the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District.
Yeah,
Let's
and one of
take
the
a
big
look
Right,
now.
Jonas. I mean, that's just it. And Legal and I talked about this in our video recently. And look, and people need to understand. And yes, Legal and I, Pro and I have talked about, Jonas and I have talked about, John and I have talked about this before. Yes, the Walt Disney Company is the juggernaut of what was formerly known as the Reedy Creek Improvement District. Yes, they were the juggernaut in terms of taxpayer dollar infusion into this hypothetically public entity that was privileged by by the Florida state legislature. However, even if 0.000000001% of the taxing body was represented by somebody other than Disney, then everything that has been brought to bear in the media in the last 24 hours with the corruption, the misappropriation of funds, the allegations of, dare I say, tax evasion, are all brought into the light. It doesn't matter. The Walt Disney Company does not have a right to a private government, and they've been treating it like that for over 50 years, and they have been abusing other tax-paying entities, other tax-paying corporate entities in that district over that time. This is the problem. And they have been using those dollars to benefit exclusively the Walt Disney Company, and more specifically, Walt Disney World Company, LLC, or whatever the hell they call it, in Florida. That's the problem.
I'll point out they also knew that they were abusing this so much, to the fact that in 1998, 31 years after this was established, they finally said, you know what, we probably don't need to have RCID employees paid directly from Disney payroll.
John, give me your thought, and then
Right.
I want to read this that explains exactly how it is they captured a local government and managed to do all of this. But John, what was your thought a few moments ago?
Yeah, one of the things too, they're not only doing a lot of this stuff, or the stuff that they're being alleged to doing, is that the fact that they didn't actually follow up on the promises that they were supposed to make. So they're offshoring all the things that they were supposed to do. They were supposed to be building, like supplying water and things like that. Here, it's I'm reading it right here. It says, where is it here?
Well,
The district is not home to any schools, hospitals, or libraries, and instead foists those costs upon the surrounding communities, which must supply those services for Disney employees and their families. Those are the things that the Walt Disney Company should have been creating under the RCID, and they clearly did not do that. And then they foisted that on the surrounding areas, and those taxpayers have to pay that. So the fact that the Walt Disney Company is shirking its responsibility in that is another big factor in that this audit exposes.
And John, the audit puts it out there. The homelessness on 192, if any of you ever watched any of the documentaries or any of the movies about it, there is a serious problem on 192 just outside of Disney, in the shadow of the Magic Kingdom. There is absolute generational poverty, and that is it's been directly influenced by Disney, right? It's not directly caused, but it's indirectly caused by Disney, because they drained those resources from the surrounding communities, because they never paid for any development, any road costs, any schools, any hospitals. They went from having, in the beginning, what was it, 20,000 employees to 100,000 employees. They've got a massive increase in the number of staff at Walt Disney World. And yet they haven't paid a dime for infrastructure, not a dime outside of their own infrastructure, which solely benefits Disney. They have a consistent history over the last 60 years of just benefiting Disney, not even other taxpayers in the district, just Disney. They even give the example, and there's the good example of the Hyatt, right? This was a super futuristic hotel that was built just outside of Disney. Well, the Hyatt ended up going completely out of business, and now it's used by those kind of urban explorers that want to go into a creepy old abandoned building because they couldn't compete, because Disney had an unfair competitive advantage because it wasn't paying any taxes, any costs, any impact fees to the surrounding communities like everybody else. It wasn't going through planning and development. It wasn't going through zoning. It was just doing whatever the hell they wanted at a bargain basement price. So this, in fact, hurt the surrounding community. It hurt other businesses rather than helped them. They came in on the promise that they were going to help, and they ended up absolutely damning the surrounding area for decades.
And so in essence, what happened is that in the 1960s, the Disney Company came in and said, we're going to do all of these wonderful things, and we're going to have a city on property. And the state of Florida said, great, we love it. We're going to give 2 cities in a special district in this area, and they're going to have all these great powers for these great things you want to do. And then once those powers were turned on, once there were actual governments in place to handle this, the Walt Disney Company captured those governments and essentially ran those governments. And as you all have been expressing, the way Disney did that is that they took all of the governmental powers that were good for them, and they also managed to make sure that they were unaffected by anything that governments should do, which are a burden to a private corporation. Now let's read exactly how it is that they managed to take over local governments. And folks, we're not talking about like under the table, they were swaying a few politicians. They literally captured local governments completely. Here's how it worked. Here's the scheme. According to the SIFTOD audit, starting on page 15, additionally, board members, talking about board members of the Reedy Creek Improvement District, were eligible for service only if they owned land in the district. In order to qualify preferred board members, Disney temporarily deeded 5-acre plots of district land to board members to hold during the duration of their service. Board members were required to return the property to Disney at the conclusion of their service. Disney also paid the property tax liability that board members incurred as a result of owning property in the district.
Hold on, stop there,
Yes.
there, right there. That, so you glanced over too quick. Disney paid the taxes of those that were supposed to be on a government board within the district. By itself, alone, just that fact, which we're about to speed by, because people would just speed by it, just that fact is per se bribery of a public official.
Yep.
Well, not only that, Andrew, but they selected, they not only bribed, but they selected who they would be bribing.
Exactly.
That's even worse.
That
doesn't make it better. That makes it worse.
I know.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg of the bribes that they were giving. I
Right.
mean, if you go down to the next page, there's a whole readout on the benefits that they received, not just retirees and members of the board of supervisors, but their vendor VIPs too. I mean, they were treated like Disney employees. They were receiving millions of dollars in annual passes, 40% discount on Disney cruises, steep discounts on food and beverages in the theme parks. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
John,
let's get these next.
Let me stimulate
the next 3 paragraphs. Go ahead, Valiant.
No, I was going to say real quick, John, you're right. 50% discounts on Disney cruises, discounts on merchandise in Disney parks, which, John, let's make sure the audience understands very clearly those discounts on those cruises. The Reedy Creek Improvement District employees had to call in off the books, off the records, and request the discounts because Disney told them they weren't on the standard employee list because, quote unquote, as evidenced by emails, if Disney had them on the employee lists, it would be a violation of Florida sunshine laws. Disney knew they were deliberately concealing their legal violations. They were deliberately concealing their criminal activity by doing that.
Let's read these next 3 paragraphs because this really gets into a level of corruption I don't think we've ever seen from a corporation in the United States in regards to capturing a government. And yes, this is all the more shocking considering that Disney just touted in a press release 2 days ago that they have received a perfect score from the Human Rights Council. They're
and beyond that,
and Bob Iger's constantly.
Yeah.
Bob Iger's constantly saying that all of this is due to a retaliation against his free speech, which is just clearly blows it out of the water.
Well, actually, the funny thing is, they're the ones that never cared about it. They had no whistleblower policy. They had no insider controls. They had no ability to speak up against Disney. If you did that, you were 100% canned and, kicked off the board, kicked out, of the company. I mean, this is something that everybody knew. They knew that Disney had them by the rat trap, if you will.
Didn't Yasser Arafat receive a perfect score from the Human Rights Council? Just saying.
I'm sure so.
mean,
Continuing with the document here. On its own, this arrangement guaranteed that board members and therefore the RCID as a whole would be responsive to Disney's preferences and would serve Disney's interests. The process of electing board members did not provide any of the district's other property owners or stakeholders with representation. In other words, Disney removed all power from anyone else to ever pick whoever they would wish to be on these boards. Alongside Disney's unilateral control of the district, the Florida legislature also imbued the RCID with all the powers of a local government. In other words, this was a governmental capture, and then some. The RCID could issue bonds and use the funds to aid Disney projects, create its own building regulations and construction permits, provide its own fire protection, manage its own stormwater, wastewater, sewage, and flood control systems, and impose its own land use and local environment regulations while simultaneously being exempted from county regulations. The RCID was even empowered to construct an airport and a nuclear power plant if it chose. So yes, we have been right the whole time about that. Disney also received control over two cities, the cities of Bay Lake and Lake Buena Vista. Neither city, listen to this, folks, if you want to know what corruption sounds like, this is it. Neither city has any employees, and each only has a handful of residents who are also Disney employees renting mobile home plots from Disney. Now, I want to go back to something that is easily to skip over.
Got those double wides, baby.
Andrew, where it says the RCID could issue bonds and use the funds to aid Disney projects.
Yes.
I think we've discovered something in the last 48 hours, let's say, that is a little concerning. Have you discovered anything in regards to Disney perhaps acting inappropriately as a broker of some sort?
Yes. I mean, it's like, everybody can go up and just sell bonds, right? Like complicated securities can just be sold on the corner. Like
that's a normal theme park activity,
Andrew,
of course.
Andrew,
got some watches for you right here.
Wait, Andrew, can I ask a question? Can Disney spell MSRB?
Municipal Securities.
I thought you'd like that one.
That's a great one. So, by the way, so guys, outside the inside baseball here, what we're talking about is these public bonds that were issued by RCID. These are government bonds that are tax-free because they are from a government. If they were a corporation, they would have to pay taxes on these bonds. And I know what you guys think. Oh, it's just taxes. When it's millions or billions of dollars in the aggregate, taxes matter a lot, right? Taxes start mattering a whole lot. So
who are they selling these bonds to, Andrew?
Well, they're selling them to large institutional investors. And guess who got involved in brokering a commodity swap?
That's what I'm interested in.
Disney. Disney
I know.
acted as a broker to sell bonds to JP Morgan.
Yes.
And they set up an email, rcid.broker@disney.com.
Here it is, page 47, folks. Right there.
And here's the best part. Wait, here's the best part, Andrew.
Make it up.
Here's the best part, Andrew. And I don't think anybody's talked about this. You bring up the great point, and I laughed about this a couple of days ago. Let's dive in. Let's cross-reference this with some other news. Here's the Valiant Renegade breaking crap. I'm going to do this on Pro's channel. Okay, they're doing this with JP Morgan, right? Here we go.
Hulu,
folks.
can you go, Valiant? Hulu, can you go?
Exactly. JP Morgan. Disney just appointed a new board member for Morgan Stanley, who they solicited to be their vendor of record when it came to a third-party valuation on the Hulu stake.
Okay, now wait a minute. Let's clarify for the audience. This is really complicated. We are saying that Disney acted as a broker of commodities to a financial institution, then placed said financial institution, one of their top people, on the board of Disney, while simultaneously that same institution is involved in evaluating the fair value price of a major streaming service that Disney wishes to acquire for a low price.
Nothing to see here, folks. Nothing to see here.
This is so complicated, and I'm going to make it even more complicated while simplifying it. So JP Morgan is the one that is valuing Hulu from Comcast side.
Yes, that's where I was going.
Morgan
that's
Stanley
where I was going.
Is the one that is valuing Hulu from Disney side. And by the way, I'm just going to throw this in here. Do you know what the CEO of Morgan Stanley's name is? JP Gorman. I just want to throw that little bit of hilariousness in here for that.
Look,
wow.
we joke about there's a multitude of industries out there that I have been involved in over the years in various stages of life. But there are, I don't know. Well, let me pass the buck. There are no more industries apart from government that are more incestuous than Wall Street. I swear to God. I mean, it's so ridiculous. I mean, when you look at this, you have to laugh your butt off. Because with Disney bringing in Morgan Stanley to value a stake in Hulu, with Comcast bringing in J.P. Morgan Chase to bring to value the stake in Hulu, and come to some conclusion, Disney appoints a Morgan Stanley senior executive to the board, and they're still involved with J.P. Morgan Chase. It will make your head spin. It will absolutely make your head spin. This is such a joke at the end of the day. But God.
All right, let's go to Andrew. Andrew, and I hate to cut you off, Valiant, but we are short on time. Andrew, all of this is very fascinating. We're talking about a vast amount of conspiracy. There may be laws for handling such vast degrees of conspiracy.
Yes.
We're talking about coordinated conspiracy. We are talking about huge sums of money. Like we said, $1 trillion here. We're talking about investors who are not going to be happy that there's $1 trillion. And, well, there's a lot of pixie dusters who didn't understand any of this, and they're furious, but that doesn't matter not one whit. But, Andrew, in terms of actual criminal conduct and whether or not anyone goes to jail for all of this, number one, it seems like they knew that they might be going to jail, because we're going to talk about, after you leave, I know you're short, we're going to talk about after you leave exactly how Disney tried to hide the football here.
Yes.
But can you tell us who might be in real criminal trouble here?
This can go all the way from the middle management and upper management of RCID, so the former employees, particularly the district administrator, the lawyers, the engineers, the folks that knew and lied to the bottom employees because they knowingly were violating the law, to the Disney employees that were double dealing, that were working for both RCID and Disney, all the way up the chain to those that knew at Disney. Anybody that knew at Disney, that had knowledge of these ongoing schemes, these ongoing, you might say, criminal enterprises, in the language of the racketing of RICO, of the racketing
Racketeering.
Act, right? Racketeering Act. In that language, running this criminal enterprise, which would be the allegation for crimes, that this is a criminal enterprise they've been running for 60 years, which was engaged in bribery, extortion, misuse of public office, various crimes, which can allow them to go all the way up the chain to whoever was sitting at the top. And currently, well, the guy sitting at the top is no exception.
Andrew, is there an excuse that they were grandfathered into this corruption? Is there an excuse I was grandfathered in and I didn't know?
Absolutely not. These are ongoing obligations, which if you come into the office, you don't have a defense of, this was how we always did it, if you know it's something you shouldn't be doing. And there's ample evidence that Disney knew that they were doing something they shouldn't be doing, and they continued to do it over and over again every single year.
Final question for you, Andrew. How, in light of all this, because so much has been opened up to us now that it wasn't visible before, we were calling it out. I mean, we've been talking about the mobile homes, we've been talking about the pseudo cities. Yes. There's a granular level to this that is amazing. But how foolish?
It's insane.
How foolish was Bob Iger to bring up any of this in an incendiary way in those financial meetings, those earnings reports? Like, what did he do to the company by doing that?
by even beyond that, it's every single earnings call, and then going back to even picking this fight in the first place, which is something that was primarily driven by Iger's interests and
Iger
Iger's
shadow
allies.
campaign.
All of this was a self-inflicted wound by Bob Iger. All of this. He didn't have to say any of this. He didn't have to escalate. He could have de-escalated at any time. He could have withdrawn the lawsuit. He could have said, you know what, we're withdrawing the lawsuit at any point. That's in Disney's sole prerogative. They could drop it and go away. But instead, they had to point the finger at Florida and say, oh, you guys are stifling free speech. Oh, you guys are enabling cronyism, right? You guys are corrupt. When really, if you look at that finger pointing, you got 3 back at them. Because
but Andrew, that was
been proven.
Andrew, it's like a 5-year-old screaming "na na 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 boo boo," and at the same time, you're at risk of actually going to prison for a very long time for $1 trillion plus of mismanaged funds, as well as decades of corrupt government capture. This is insanity.
And you'll be thankful to only have one shower that day.
Yes.
Well, I think Bob Iger needs to hope that they have Mickey Mouse shaped. So, but that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you for helping me join you, and I will catch you on the next one when I can. Folks, make sure you check out Andrew over at Legal Mindset. Fantastic commentary and analysis. One of a kind. Go check it out. Thank you, Andrew. All right. Well, are we losing anybody else right now, or do we want to read the...
I got to head out.
Jonas, tell us what you've got coming up on That Park Place, the YouTube channel.
Well, we're going to be talking about this, oddly enough, and we're also going to be breaking down the last half of the Breaking Bob series. We're going to be going over some of that on That Park Place Live on Thursday at noon. We said we were going to wait an entire week before we started doing That Park Place Live at noon on Thursdays, but you know what? We've just got too much to talk about, so. That's where we're going to start. And of course, we've got the daily countdown every day at 11, and we got videos at 4 p.m. So, yeah, good stuff. Lots of it coming.
This is the story of the decade. So I'm sure we'll be doing more coverage. John?
Yeah, just one of the things that what Andrew was saying before he left was that it was all self-inflicted wounds. And he's doing that. Bob Iger's still doing that now. I mean, he went after Elon Musk, and Musk is not going to put up with that. So he's just creating more and more enemies every time he seemingly makes a public appearance or makes a statement. And I think that goes back to what Valiant was saying earlier in the video here, is that the guy's just a terrible leader, and he hasn't really done anything except for lead Disney down the drain.
Buy other stuff that's successful, drive that successful stuff to not being successful, and malign and slime the people who were at the top making it successful on their way out, in which he enforces their exit in the most ceremonious and unsavory way. I.e. John Lasseter, i.e. George Lucas. We can keep going. But I want to show you guys this.
Immediate example. I mean,
Bob Chapek was treated
immediately.
But let me show you guys this, because as we wrap up this video, I want folks out there to understand how desperate Disney was to do anything they could to stop us from knowing this. Here's how they tried to hide the football at the very end. The report says on page 11, for its part, Disney resisted the change by desperately seeking to lock in long-term agreements right as the new board was seated. In other words, as the Reedy Creek Improvement District and its corruption were being dissolved, Disney attempted through the RCID to make long-standing changes. How bad? Here they are. For instance, it came to light that annually in September, the district had negotiated a labor services contract with a Disney subsidiary to use Disney employees to serve and maintain utility assets owned by the district. But on the eve of the new board entering in February, the RCID put into place a new 10-year agreement purporting to obligate the district to continue using Disney employees to serve and maintain the district's utility assets. This was but one astounding example of the outgoing board trying to tie the hands of its successor.
Yep.
Other self-serving 11th hour agreements between the district and Disney were set to last 30 years, and in at least one case, more than 100 years.
The King Charles stipulations.
Yes,
right?
all in an attempt to lock in Disney special privileges for as long as possible. Over the next 7 months, the new board worked to uncover what Disney was attempting to conceal and obscure.
Yep.
And Valiant, this was so bad, actually, that had this gone through, what Disney attempted was, in the 11th hour, they attempted, through a government that they utterly controlled as it was being dissolved, they attempted to grant the entire Walt Disney World Resort unprecedented homeowners association guidelines that would grant them for 100 years
Yep.
government powers via an HOA, and would have if this had ever succeeded, it would have altered the property rights of America forever.
Exactly. And that's the thing that you bring up an excellent point right there. Andrew and I have discussed this. You and I have discussed this, John. And look, this is a key thing. You don't have to be a legal expert to understand the basic premise of Disney's fallacy argument. And that is this, what Pro just said. If you could confer, and this is what Disney tried to do, if you could confer governmental powers to a private body under a homeowners association agreement. Everybody out there watching this probably lives in some HOA, some homeowners association, a neighborhood, a city, a town. If you could just grift your governmental powers to a private body under an HOA, imagine what this would do. It doesn't exist. There's no state in America that allows this to happen. This was the violation of law in Florida, amongst everything else that Disney violated under state statutes. This is the problem. Disney's a grifter. Disney's a liar. Disney is a fraud.
And I think that 11th hour effort suggests just how desperate they were to hide this. John, I want to go to you for the very last word. This has been a year unlike any other. If you imagined what an entertainment company could, how badly they could fail, you might come up with all kinds of theoretical ways they could fail. For Disney, take that and multiply it by 3, 4, 5, it doesn't matter. And now here we are, December of 2023, the end of the year, and this is coming out. And it is astounding that somehow in a year that they have managed to implode in a way we've never seen, they still managed to blow everything from the prior 11 months out of the water with this. John, talk to us with the last word about where is Disney versus where they once were.
Oh, I think that they're a cursed fig tree. The fruit has not produced when it is time to come. Instead, we're getting rotten fruit, and it's absolutely poisonous. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that you have a poor leader in Bob Iger, and he's created acolytes to all of these kind of policies like Reimagine Tomorrow. We're seeing those Reimagine Tomorrow policies are being enacted in these race-based hiring with contracts in this document. I also think one of the things that Valiant likes to point out is Disney's always paying itself when it comes to the streaming services. We're seeing that here. That's what they were trying to do with this homeowners association thing.
Amen.
And not only were they trying to confer government powers to themselves, they're just trying to pay themselves. And they do this all the time. So, I mean, this looks like this is the Walt Disney Company business model, and it's throughout their entire company. The entire company is just rotten at this point. And I think that reflects, and this is a theory that I've been putting out here for a number of years now, is that when you are kind of rotten to the core, you can't create anything good. And we see that reflected in their movies and television shows that they have been putting out over the past half decade. I mean, we don't even have to look that far. Just look at look at the Marvels. I think Valiant has estimated they burned over $500 million just on those two movies, not even everything else that they've been doing. So the company has completely flushed itself down the toilet, and it is a very messy toilet at that.
John, you just made an excellent point that I had not considered in this whole situation. I think you're absolutely on point with that. And that is Disney's mantra, is that they will siphon and recycle monies and cash flows through themselves to no end. We've talked about it in the theatrical and studio releases. And yes, you're absolutely right. They did it at Reedy Creek. They did the same damn thing. I didn't even think about that before. And you nailed it. That's it. It's the same problem. It's the same problem.
When you have a private company, well, not private, but Disney is not a government entity. When they capture a government entity, and then they set in place a system where that government is hiring based on race, That's about as bad as it gets, but there's 100 of those things in this document. Folks, we've been going at this almost an hour. We can't get to it all. We'll have to talk about it more because we're talking about page after page after page of on a single page what would take down an entire company on its own. And I would just say this as we wrap up, guys. Bob Iger returned, and he had quite the legacy. In his form that he has taken on now, I'm here to tell you, Disney is on a path where he might be the next Ken Lay. Bob Iger, and the Disney company. This is Enron level. I'm not. Listen, when you're talking about $1 trillion mismanaged over the next 100 years, when you're talking about corruption, illegal, unconstitutional corruption for decades, all being uncovered now, this is the kind of scandal I think we're looking at. The question will be, will the federal government actually follow through on this? Because there's lots of friendship here. There's lots of hands that have been shaken together. Will the feds come after Disney, or is this just the state of Florida? If it's just the state of Florida, there's only so much. But if the federal government gets involved, look out, folks. Look out. I don't know that will happen, and I think it is now all the more important. It's far more important than Disney. But the presidential election of 2024 will have a dramatic effect on Disney, I think. So, all right, folks, go ahead,
real quick, because of what you just said, I just want to chime in from a compliance disclosure standpoint. In the comparison to Enron, I just want to make sure that everybody listening right now understands that there were some distinctions between these two situations. And we are not accusing the Walt Disney Company of violating ERISA trust 401k retirement plans of Disney employees. That was the big thing that got Enron.
Right, these are categorically different.
Yeah.
But in terms of scale, in terms of scale of wrongdoing, considering we don't yet know all that we don't know yet about Disney, this is getting quite large, I would say. Yeah. And so I just want to put it out there. I'm not saying, folks, that you should make any investment decisions or financial decisions about the Walt Disney Company. I'm not suggesting that any of these things have been proven out yet. But if we go down this path, and if this is just the beginning in this document, wow, look out. Valiant, do you think we're safe on that at this point?
No, I think we are. I just want to make the distinction that we're not saying that Disney is violating employee retirement plans or anything like that. That was a big issue with Enron. There was a lot of accounting issues, a lot of violations. But
in this case, we're alleging that Disney is alleged to have captured local governments and used them to their advantage.
Yes,
so
that's a fair assumption.
Categorically different in terms of scale. Maybe not so different in that regard. But folks, make sure you click on the links to both Valiant Renegade and the Trent Report, channels that you should be subscribed to. If you're not, what are you thinking? Let's go. And if you like content like this, well, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe. When you click it, you stick it to the algorithms, hit the notification bell, drop a comment down below, let us know your thoughts. My gosh, what a conversation, but we want you to be part of it as well. So hop in there, drop a line, and tell us what you think. And folks, don't waste those great thoughts inside your mind. Wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Oh.
What are you doing?
Well, you see, I wanted to get some inside scoops on Disney and their different corporations, if you know what I mean. So I figured by looking into this fistbowl and sucking it randomly with my own energy that I pay for, you paid for, I could do the whole experience where you can be a master and spy on your targets.
You're an idiot. If you want to get the inside scoop on Disney or even other media organizations, you should check out thatparkplace.com and subscribe to WDW Pro's YouTube channel. That'd be way easier, more accurate, and less dumb.
Are you saying I won't get accurate information this way?
No, you can't.
Who'd have think?